Okay, well, how many contradictions have you come up with that people, as you share your faith, say, well, what about this and what about that? So, come to my website and let's talk about the ones I've come across and posted. Or when critics ask, those are your people who want to discredit, discreditors, by Norman Geisler. There's a couple other books there online. They have people that have done some marvelous work and research. Spent hours and hours, more than I could, and a higher level of research capacity than I have. In any case, point 40, contradiction, comes up again. Acts chapter 7 is a great historical perspective that Stephen gave, and I've done some research on it. Was all the livestock in Egypt destroyed twice over? And this has to do with the 10 plagues that God brought upon Egypt through Moses. And you can look at that, but we've already looked at that before, where it's just that the number of cattle and livestock, different cattle, different animals, four-legged, in the field, they were destroyed by whatever it was, and some were kept in areas where they were protected, inside barns or buildings or in shelter. And then the second plague came along, and that was also causing all those in the field to be destroyed. So it's the same story. We won't belabor it anymore. Next point, and this gets to be a little bit more philosophical. People who've maybe studied the Bible way before they fell apart, apostatized. To be an apostate, you have to have been a believer and then fall away from the faith. Interesting enough, you fall away from the faith, but you can't fall away from your salvation. That's a good point. It's the eternal security passages. You can look at those. But in any case, in Habakkuk 1:13, you are, meaning God, of purer eyes than to behold evil, and cannot look on wickedness. Why do you look on those who deal treacherously? And hold your tongue. That's God. Hold your tongue when the wicked devours a person more righteous than he. Well, I've heard this all kinds of forms, but in the same subject matter. Well, the Hebrew verb navat, defined to look intently at, by implication from the context and the Hithpael stem. Hence, Hebrew 1:13 is not saying that God cannot look at sin, but that he cannot look at it intently in the sense of approval or favor. Furthermore, God is omniscient and hence knows all things, including acts of sin, which men commit. And the answer is, how can God do this, know of this, and see this, gazed at it, not in approval, and let it happen? Some of the answer is test, T-E-S-T. God has allowed humanity, and in his righteousness cannot take it away because it's gone bad. He gave the sovereignty over the earth of humanity. And in the garden, it was usurped by Satan and by the sin nature of mankind, and they allow a season of being able to express their sins and sin. And then he'll finish it all. But throughout it all, there is the gospel. From the very beginning, Adam and Eve, the seed of the woman will be the man, Jesus, who will rescue people from their sins through his sacrifice for sins himself, and all mankind by grace. But it's not going to be a blessed life in the sense of everything is going to be untested, and you're not going to go through difficulty and see difficulty. Just remember this, all the children who die before accountability go to be with the Lord. So in any case, we have that answer. That's quick enough. Matthew places the grain plucking and withered hand episodes after the healing of the centurion's servant, while Luke places it beforehand. They didn't get together. Interestingly enough, this is a good lesson in how to read the Bible. Little innuendos like, and after this, and so on. That's chronological. But when there is not any sense or implication of time passing sequentially, then it may not be chronological. Some contend that there is a chronological contradiction between Matthew's and Luke's accounts of Jesus' healing of the centurion's servant and the grain picking and healing on the Sabbath. A lot of things can be misconstrued as they didn't get it right, one gospel author or the other. And it could be a similar incident, because Jesus did a lot of the same things and spoke of the same things over and over and over again, because they had the whole population of millions of people in the Palestinian area coming and going. Firstly, Matthew places the grain plucking and withered hand episodes chronologically after the healing of the centurion's servant, while Luke addresses topically the two Sabbath events in chapter 6 before he writes of the centurion's servant's healing in chapter 7. I used to run into this when I took a college course on the Bible, and I lost my complete faith in the Bible because the pastor spoke of manipulating the scriptures according to the particular author's point of view, and purposely allowing misconceptions and errors to be in his writings. The following chart compares the passages to help determine when the authors are writing chronologically and when they are writing topically. The healing of the centurion's servant. Before the centurion's servant's healing, Matthew 8:1, when he had come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And before the centurion's healing in Luke, now he concluded all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. So Matthew 8:2-4, and behold, a leper came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Then Jesus put out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing, you be cleansed. Immediately his leprosy was cleansed, and Jesus said to him, see that you tell no one, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them. So Jesus had come down from the mountain after his Sermon on the Mount, and then Jesus healed the leper. So the wording in Matthew is chronological, but not all events are included. Over here in Luke, Jesus concluded his sayings. He concluded his Sermon on the Mount on a level place on the mountain. So it was not a sermon on the mount. It was a sermon on the plain, adjacent to a mountain. And Luke did not include the healing of the leper. So the wording is chronological, but not all events are included. If you want the authors to coincide with one another, well, you be the editor, but you're not. So the event, the healing of the centurion's servant. In Matthew 8:5-13, now when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a common point with Luke, a centurion came to him, pleading with him, sick, in verse 6, saying, Lord, my servant is lying at home, paralyzed, dreadfully tormented. And Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard it, he marveled, and said to those who followed, assuredly I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. And I say to you that many will come from east and west, and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom, Israelites, will be cast out into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now that's not talking about going to hell, it's talking about being cast out of fellowship in the millennial kingdom. Then Jesus said to the centurion, go your way, and as you have believed, so let it be done for you. And his servant was healed under that same hour. You look under Matthew 22 for that, by the way, to corroborate. I did a study on that. Got in all kinds of trouble because people didn't like hearing the fact that if you're not faithful, you're not going to be all that happy in the kingdom. You're realizing what you have lost. Anyway, let's go to Luke. The event, the healing of the centurion's servant. Luke 7:1-10. Now when he concluded at all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. Okay, here's a similarity here. And a certain centurion servant, who was dear to him, was sick and ready to die. So when he heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews to him, pleading with him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying that the one for whom he should do this was deserving, for he loves our nation and has built a synagogue. Then Jesus went with them. Notice additional details that Luke provides. Then Jesus went with them, and when he was already not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying to him, Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Therefore I do not even think myself worthy to come to you, but say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man placed under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to one, Go, and he goes, and to another, Come, and he comes, and to my servant, Do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, and turned around, and said to the crowd that followed him, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even Israel. And those who were sent, returning to the house, found the servant well, who had been sick. So Jesus entered Capernaum. Jesus healed the centurion's servant. Now the wording is chronological, but not all events are included. Same thing on the Matthew side. And some details are provided on one side or the other. Okay, after the healing of the centurion's servant, first we have what Luke provided on the right here. Luke 7:11-17. It now had happened the day after that he went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and a large crowd as well. And when he came near the gate of the city, behold, a dead man was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a large crowd from the city was with her. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said to her, Do not weep. Then he came and touched the open coffin, and those who carried him stood still. And he said, Young man, I say to you, arise. So he who was dead sat up and began to speak. And he presented him to his mother. Then fear came upon all, and they glorified God, saying, A great prophet is risen up among us, and God has visited his people. And this report about him went throughout all Judea and all the surrounding region. And Luke 4:38-39, Now he arose from the synagogue and entered Simon's house. But Simon's wife's mother was sick with a high fever, and they made request of him concerning her. So he stood over her and rebuked the fever, and it left her, and immediately she rose and served them. So, the phrase, the next day, in Luke 7:11 indicates chronologically that Jesus' raising up of the man in Nain came the day after the healing of the centurion's servant. On the other hand, Luke's account of Jesus' healing of Peter's mother-in-law, as indicated in an earlier chapter, Luke 4:38-39, came after Jesus exorcised a demon in the synagogue in Capernaum. Author Luke evidently was not arranging everything chronologically all the time. He often wrote topically, which is here, but nevertheless reported events chronologically, such as Jesus' raising of the dead man in Nain the day after the healing of the centurion's servant. So there is no chronological conflict between Luke's and Matthew's account. Let's look at Luke 8:14-15. Now when Jesus had come into Peter's house, he saw his wife's mother lying sick with a fever. So he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she arose and served them. So the healing of Peter's mother-in-law is indicated as coming after the healing of the centurion's servant. Now when, see? There is neither a specific time nor any event stipulated as directly following the healings of the centurion's servant, which allows for Jesus' next day's raising of the dead in Nain in Luke 7:11-17 to occur beforehand. Let each author, so the wording here is chronological in Matthew, but not all events are included. And in Luke, there is no chronological conflict between Luke's and Matthew's account. Sometimes you're in a conversation and something reminds you of something else, and you go, oh, by the way, and it's not chronological. Well, the authors of the Bible, as inspired by the Holy Spirit, can do the same thing. Now, what about plucking grain and the healing of a withered hand on the Sabbath? Well, after the events depicted in chapter 8 above in Matthew, And after Jesus